Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I didn't plan to speak today. We're talking about the committee system, and we're talking about floor actions like this is something new. The supermajority that we've heard about through conversations today, that's what's new. The Democratic Party had control of both bodies of the legislature for 140 years. And early on, I couldn't get a bill heard. I couldn't get recognized in committee. I had a challenging time ever having a conversation on the floor about a concern that I have. There were certain people who were able to pass bills. There are certain people who were able to talk on bills. So it's not something that's new. And all that being said, two wrongs don't make a right. Even though it did happen for 140 years, I think that the Speaker, I think that most, if not all, of our committee chairmen have gone out of their way to have people heard, much more so than what I experienced in my early years down here. I heard an interesting reaction from the crowd a few moments ago as someone was talking about when this legislature changes and when members who may be here now may be dead and gone. And the crowd outside cheered like that. The crowd cheered when that was mentioned. And that hurts my heart that anyone could wish or laugh when we're talking about our members being gone, members being dead and gone. That's what's being discussed. We talk about the focus not being on an individual, but we're seeing that individual right now bring the focus to himself. I heard there was also said earlier, people had opinions of who I was before people even knew who I was. And we were talking about how to learn the rules and how many rules there are and how it's a challenge to learn the rules in such a short time. And one of the ways I learned the rules down here was from senior members. And I came on the floor several weeks ago and expressed the way that I learned the rules of the House, and I'm expressing that to the 15 freshman men on the floor, and I tell them the story of Lois DeBerry and how she expressed to me what was understood I was supposed to be doing, and I took that advice in good faith. And I never made that mistake again. The reactions that we have seen began calling me everything in the book. National media called me everything in the book. Thankfully, members of leadership on the Democratic side came up to me and said, "We know you're not what you were called. We know that you care. We know that you've been a part of this process." So I just left that as someone being naive. We left it at that. But I'm wondering, how do we learn the rules? Do we sit there and read what's on the paper? Is it life experience? Do we listen to those who have gone through this legislative process before to teach us, to try to instruct us? And I'm going to get to a question here. We've been talking about how individuals at a particular time last week got to the well, but I'm wondering, what was the plan to get out of the well? And we saw there in the video being chastised by leadership. What was the plan to get out?
Representative Pearson, you're recognized.
Representative Hawk represents something that we ought to talk about. And it's a common phrase. I'm not going to talk about white supremacy and things like that right now, because I think that's what you're referring to. That's not what I'm going to talk about. What I want to talk about is just a common phrase that all of you know. Hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. And there have been folks like this, and I didn't even realize Democrats had been in control of the House for 140 years or anything like that. That's a substantial amount of time. But in what the representative said was given reasoning or license for mistreatment of other members that are not currently in the majority. That is not how we sustain our democracy. Saying these things such as, I didn't get recognized in committees. Saying things like, only certain people could pass bills. These are the exact same things that I hear as a member of the minority party. There's something wrong in the way that this House is operating. And when it got called into question in a peaceful protest to end gun violence, the response was not, what could we do to do something different? What could we do to do something better? How can we recognize that this change is something that the people in this state are demanding and asking for? It wasn't, how do we listen to the parents and the children who are protesting, not calling them insurrectionists? It wasn't, what can we do to make sure this body responds to the needs of our communities, not with just spending hundreds of millions of dollars on more war or weapons of war, or doing things like lowering the age requirement for people to get guns. The idea was to now arm teachers. It was not, what do we get from the people who came to listen and to show up and be a part of the process, as you call it. That wasn't it. Your hurt continues to cause you to hurt people. And this body is hurting people. You just expelled a member for exercising their First Amendment rights. For a House decorum rule, when the last two people committed actual crimes. 22 counts of sexual assault. Bribery. Is that you're having to address ideas and people different than you're used to. You're having to answer questions that you're not used to having to answer. You're having to see people in positions just like you that you aren't used to seeing. That's, now I understand, Representative Hawk, what Representative Farmer was getting to about why I'm really here. Doesn't have to do with not following decorum, about fighting for the end of gun violence. It has to do with an idea and an ideology that says there's only one way that we're going to allow thinking up in here if you're going to be here. It's only one way that you're going to be if you're going to be in this house. But the news for you and for every member in this legislative body is that this country is changing in magnificent ways. That the diversity of the state of Tennessee is changing in magnificent ways. That the voices and the people who are protesting aren't just black folk and ain't just white folk, ain't just rich folk or poor folk. It is a multiracial coalition built on a solidarity dividend that can break any institution that refuses to change. And so, because we need not cling to hurt, I suggest that this institution choose to change. Change the way that it is operating in order for justice to be possible here, for everybody's voice to be treated equitably here. I will say this. Lois DeBerry, Speaker Pro Tem, why was she never the Speaker of this House? She deserved to be Speaker of this House. And the reality is, the reason that she was saying things about decorum and things like that was because she understood that the institution that she was a part of The institution, as the second black woman, I believe, to ever be elected in the Tennessee state legislature, the way she had to present herself, the things she had to do and say, and the way she had to look was so important because black folk wouldn't get respected otherwise, because white folks wouldn't respect them. They'd call them boy, they'd call them girl instead of chairperson or speaker pro tem.